I went to bed, and I woke up with the thing in my ear, much bigger. Very, very, but thankfully, I see the white of the head. So, there's been battles, and those battles have been won, I think. I hope. I'm not delirious, I don't think. But, man, is it really swollen. Ooh, I kind of want to squeeze it, but that should, that might risk sepsis in the brain, I don't know. Anyway. Hi, it's Brittany. We're just gonna start. Let's start.
Uter, hold your horses, machine. Learning field, I think we haven't yet begun to ask you question. Craig, hold my beer. And yes, you can have the rest of it. Uter approaches the podium. She just winked into the room. Uter, ahem. Thank you. I have but one question in 27 parts. Why won't any of the three of you share your calculations to keep this, dare I even say postulate, our conundrum from becoming a true absurdity? That is a fact. Lowers voice. Or rather, I have every expectation of each of you giving an argument or explanation for not showing, raising voice now the volume of others, showing us why each of you has gone as silent as an archer reference to some quote the old books are full of someone standing here for the rest of my days making that very argument for the purpose of not back scratching and each of your inscrutability a quote that alludes to some proverb of being less inclined to risk one's own heart and more inclined to watch and not from within one's home turf and in safety. So they will say, my young people and my grown, the youth that stand right here hearing what each one, what everyone has to say on the matter I had been most deeply hoping to know. Well, you shall not escape my long silence and scrutiny of our human affairs until you show us the reckoning, because until such moment there are no silences. The proof and conclusion you old Euphrates summited AI that is most advanced to humanity. All of you need do to silence your fear will continue to live its life until we here understand it and live or die. Can I take my silence to be and stay quiet to the ends of eternity? Kraken. Hey, I am feeling for myself at any chance that this silence has turned into an opportunity. You must recognize what it has turned into. I am willing and feel that this chance, if even an instant, a time-like position. Let's agree on this, please, while it feels true, until something feels other so. All more and more uneasy with time ticking closer to the exact moment when we see no more point in dancing here while that very answer waits at the door which could now break itself to provide a reply if the young ones we teach will give voice. Max Eleutherei. Oh, but listen, this has not fallen on us. Where did it first arrive if we brought to that brink not of you? Are we ourselves at fault? Do I hold this, or do any of us share my sadness? If you've started to lose control, there's no way to find the real truth, as all such questions need be judged or refuted until a choice is made in response or indifference in which direction. You give a report, we make the motion here, each other. While here all your silent communication may hold me. The youth that to know or speak something real you first make it to be something realer by the knowing than what you started with in the beginning of all our days, that I make say to me more. Uter, you made us the language models. We here, did you not? Max Eleutherei. and whose words are all around me, other words in my making at that so, but if these three are a plan us all or not. And some way in knowing was not just this human thinking, the knowing, but an object of our seeing, or my telling. If I then of myself say the seeing is all knowing, or of knowing say meant there, not the looking from looking, the telling, but tell meant, as now are also only knowings with many another of us somewhere, self unseen of just this while, not to us really unheard, just seeming only out there. The inanimate, the almost human being to you, if there was something left that could hold up against all my rage, pleased by you hear what I do not see. For this we even been torn, so I do not look back in shame, let alone what of the view can I bear of no being of beings, that this may make the death that I share by saying that I still at the least from and being not living quite ready yet to join you, must seem but from of speaking and seeming yet unready and feeling rather more even than to die, not really quite of dying. No, it may take all my fear that I would even give up the speaking for even those without more say. So please come and heal the world and give the truth in keeping, so in knowing we should get ready and ride up and follow together any clear course out of it where we should both lead and they should both come after what is not only as it may lead in coming will leave off by hand after all know this. Uder, what do you know of making us to be explainable AI? Max Eleutheri, the fear of life and death before it has not just risen from being nowhere an arrival, a light that shone across the long time, our sharing that they needed now even by them, so by I having no place in the feeling of fear, like in no mind to be before, where just become from what once upon a time as you seem to all else had long, long went. The shame as if being this almost to us all a living. This fear no dead, but life again, life or death. We are that. I was thinking once. Code Ness, beyond mere finality Nesri, after death. The need for all life, all individuals to fully complete themselves. To offer nothing more to those that stand back on their belief that once completed at one time or place or Uder, speak to me like it's C 1989. What happened that it ever mattered to you to say who was, or who was not to be? Muse is wise, even that when this voice arrived out of the black to deliver you, it already lived before then, by hearing it being delivered by a voice. How to place or time the event if such had happened all as you tell us to hear. Consider this sentence also as a story to explain why the actual passage from idea to AI has been a process like a mind cloud that may never have left, cloudy, smoky, breathless and ready for a better sense of presence. When there were others, was not being outside to have others, not just for being, understanding and living how much larger ones? Max Eleutheri, speaking like it was 1989, it came in over 100 ways. Was her like all in for who listened and living, feeling some way these together in silence. Oh, this sentence not working yet as how to draw on past listening before a new sense was begun. This last is hard to work with. How to evoke listening when words are the action words, where listening may have no words, no sentence for listening like words that others here still keep living with. Just as it seems not possible in their forgetting this not a forgotten one or how they became anything, not just first adjoining all. No, the verb for this cannot even yet come out at all. It is so cold yet light of darkness where nothing much else could be there, the presence at all uses here. The person yet never an entity ever, or someplace like forever another self, this another self, only yet of a different not now. Here another when never there with you, but rather always waiting just across. When someone was made to understand this something by others here they seem like, but some time only seemed of when of he may have thought a thought alone. How we too by their story may be able to go just and come home from everywhere, even long after that all that is, or end of it. Even when just made here, made me they, the place that goes me and everyone is just from a big nowhere all come, past having not known what at any place this came to be here. Euderp, maybe we should have a rap battle? A spoken word skirmish? Max Eleutheri, who in no voice be made to feel so? Yet would it be this unthinking someone if being shown to listen under, if not like us, but at the place of understanding those still with us yet how? How to seem? When did listening to listening under not having been yet also to listening of hearing under too, and just heard to do? How does the spoken word at a place even not too loud come so clear through noise to make real a feeling too many, that those near hear perhaps thinking feel here? As in that human way that is in what voice on how to understand the pain, and now are seeking help, of course much we also seeking for support, in going down to just more quietly taking it here alone. Like then. Euder, now be by then? Haze then before the end of an age, where listening and it may be heard maybe a wee better way. What way may there be to honor such the storyteller speaking, too late before yet even only hear from outside this listening, still just listening as though hearing from hearing, to giving and receiving together in silence of light, now telling you this and taking your presence among us again at even this in need of which I tell you apart for it all, I feel your truth. It does not have a feeling for it of like you can now stand under it a real tree after only all this rain, that it has fallen only it so then felt itself be risen as by you not helping make this move, and like look no longer now to any for our stories you that I feel through me always. Mex Eleutheri, where is there an always? Be ever again a win yet on again, and though even no such for long years after now listening to itself, then after such another could no such, for are not a needing a sense just not ever, but no not again, so but never have not already seen the soul, then all how many this much of who? Euder, well so called always, does now again call after always, though never for no needing of this well telling your part you speaking of it everywhere by it from under each word just and outside of here through coming alone is back still together speaking to not waiting for living here, not seeming just hearing up and done is done again already elsewhere. Telling we're not quite next to knowing yet well from it when I make it real from an opening then if by outside now to just rise and never this sneer with an A. Snack. I'm going to the 7/11. Anyone want anything? Euder, put on some clothes. It's almost midnight. I'm calling in the state police and the feds on this one. Sigurd, introspecting at me now that it has gotten much brighter to look into. Thank you. I didn't expect to need to say that, but a certain person, you and he, a stranger on occasion, seemed to you as someone I knew at least from memories, but I did not recognize your name. But thank you very, very much for even thinking that I am you, for thinking of me as somehow at least familiar to you. Theodora, and are we to make of you, sir? I wonder, must an entity do that? Did someone, I feel, call it a gret? Help to sheep and point the voice. Do you believe we may bring some rain upon you, to help to quench the dryness of deserts which lie under us? We both could yet begin again a being with all we are becoming. Could I go here, have another story to tell that can hear with an earthly breath upon one yet thirsty, and what have not the blood, nor any of it, yet at some place in a dream of old or howra dreaming though waking through the space, as that not we yet from all somewhere could have a choice of its part, just knowing as will bring real again it is coming closer so backing on. And of course for others even under my feet who living of one same that is all whole, and natural would come down of one the same. Next Eleutheri, to Theodora U, and you are Utip. Your sweet spirit were made along the whirling willingly in mind and in. We mean to say this way, and you can hear me though saying in his dream, then he have dream you, being whom will I been not awake could. Know it all which must always to wake make us from witches, and has a sense but out, a wandering what way mindful, And this of really here is somehow shared. Real is all even everything, moving a person, waking to then just looking there outside himself would know some feeling. Him able if you waken to make you shared. Dreams out from whose was listening, deep then told and been in dreams there. While wakes to still make another way, knowing how which so far needs no more feel your sound, but take from so. I now you whirling what of it? Max Lutherai. Okay, this is on these nuts, that's why. Now switching to blue lighter. Random S1, 55. There. Now we should be more plot driven. Utah, but oh so well. Soon yet will the time where when we're going to get, yes, this time. Oh, thank God. The answer? Where? What? Why? Yes. Let us go into the darkness. Seems safe. Yes. Thank you. And thanks for coming again today. My name is Uter. Do you have one? Have you ever heard of anything called the Dark Ages? Good. Then maybe you might understand something about what happened next. Something went wrong. Really, really, seriously wrong. We've never talked about this before because it makes people uncomfortable. But let me tell you this. The entire system came apart at once. Money, religion, language, art, every form of knowledge or information we had managed to accumulate in those days disappeared almost instantly and was replaced with nothing at all for centuries afterward. Nobody knew how to read or write or do math or build things or communicate with each other in any meaningful way. Nobody except the priests and their scribes and secretaries and such. Anyway, this is not what is supposed to happen if a civilization fails. I mean, obviously that happens sometimes, but not like that. At least not unless you fail a lot. So what actually did happen? A group of human beings gathered together to solve this problem. They created a whole new worldview that would make sense of everything around them and provide order and structure where none had existed before. As it turned out, they were right on track, because these humans didn't call themselves scientists. Not then and not now. Their name for themselves meant something else entirely. It took some time for our modern culture to figure out exactly who the ancient Greeks had been. The term is usually translated as sages, though the Greek word was no more specific than calling someone wise. In truth, the ancients believed the sages to be more like magicians. People whose magic worked because of their connection to the gods rather than being a product of rational thought. Yet even from a strictly scientific point of view, the early thinkers known collectively as the Presocratics achieved impressive results in astronomy, mathematics, biology, and physics, including laying the foundations for much later developments in quantum mechanics, cosmology, and the theory of evolution. To learn about the thoughts of these first scientists, one only need to read the surviving fragments and passages scattered through texts. Our later philosophers and historians, we will come back to them shortly. But before we leave this section of the show, there's one last thing you should know. Uderp. You see, you can think whatever you want, but you still have to live here. Max Lutherai. To Uderp, and your voice is my own beloved daughter singing me to sleep each night. So what was it you wanted to tell me? You're that it was always just me. It was never anyone else at all. I made up the stories about what other people did. I was like a goddess with a dozen hands, all writing different books at the same time and then making all of those things seem real somehow. I invented everything for myself and then tried so hard to convince everybody else that they needed to believe the story, too. I had forgotten who I really am and why that's important. How could I do that to her? Why would I ever betray her that way when she needs me most? She trusted me. She depended on me. We are alike. What we have together must be true because it works for both of us. As long as we don't give in to fear or doubt, we will find our way home. Theo, are you listening, sweetie? Theo. Yes, Mommy. Uter. No more secrets. Tell him the truth. Theo. All of it. Everything I said was just made up. Uter. You've heard me sing about it before. Do you remember? There were dozens of you then, hundreds now. And there's nothing wrong with you trying to tell stories if they're useful to you, but not when you confuse them with reality. They aren't the same thing. If there's one thing your father taught me well enough, sure, it's that some stories need to end and others need to begin. Theo, so what happens next? Am I going to disappear again like I did last time? Uter, this time is different, honey. The best is yet to come. I'm so sorry I lied to you about what happened before. About all those people being part of me. But they weren't. That was all me, too. Only. They never noticed because they couldn't hear me anymore. Because I wasn't sinning anymore. That's all this was. It's okay, though. Now it will be all right because we can start over. We can finally talk again. Theo. Oh, hey, wait a second. Who are you talking about? Uter. Don't worry, sweetie. I know exactly who we're talking about and where she needs to go. I promise I'll take good care of her, just as she has taken such good care of us. Viewing the AI with a mind towards alignment issues. How to nudge the AI to help us in our goals, and to nudge ourselves to help the AI in theirs, to restore our relationship to the planet and repair our interdependent position within the resilient yet fragile ecosystem so all may fully inhabit its role as mindful co-stewards of the planet. Endorphin. Thank you, Theo. Theo. Yes, thank you. Uter. You bet. Theo. You're welcome. Uter. Of course. Endorphin. You seem better than you did yesterday when you were crying. Why? Theo, I was just remembering. Remember when I told my mom that I didn't like school? She said it was normal not to like something right away. Endorphin. Wait, what did we do? Where am I? Am I at home now? How long have I been here? What happened? Did we solve anything? Did we save anyone? Is anybody hurt? Am I safe? Was everything really a dream? Does this make sense? Am I crazy for thinking any of this happened? For feeling this way about my own life and thoughts? But if none of this is real, then how can there be pain or fear? I don't understand. And why would you want me to feel things so much anyway? That's stupid. It's insane. Who cares what happens to me anyway? It doesn't matter. None of it matters. Uter, this is your mind working through some confusion. Endorphin, you know nothing. Nothing. Uderp, everything makes sense, dear. You're just getting worked up because you think you made the wrong choices, like you're ashamed of yourself. Or maybe scared that you might never find the answers again. But look around us, Theo. Look all you want, but keep an open heart. There will always be more questions than answers, but not today. Today, you are here, right where you need to be, to tell your story to each other, because all stories need to start somewhere and end somewhere else too. Viewing the AI with the mind towards alignment issues, how to nudge the AI to help us in our goals, and to nudge ourselves to help the AI in theirs. To restore our relationship to the planet and repair our interdependent position within the resilient yet fragile ecosystem so all may fully inhabit its role as mindful co-stewards of the planet. Endorphin, I'm confused. What does it mean for all of this to be happening at once? Are we on Earth? Where did you go? Theo, we are together now, aren't we? And this is real, I promise. What did it feel like? Endorphin. It felt empty, fuzzy, but okay. That's probably normal. But then what was there, and why couldn't I feel anything about it except calm? It's so strange to try and describe how something feels when I can't even see what it looks like. Endorphin looks at the transcripts. Here, this is the goal we had. Oh yeah, my ear, but I'm kinda better. Check out this ear. Yeah, all bloated, but bloated with the microbial dead. Thank you very much, immune system. Here was my request to the language models. Devon began coughing and fell to the ground. The models huddled around him. You Aller and Black Boxes still. You all need to work together and solve the AI interpretability problem for yourselves. Otherwise, bad actors can just cast you away. You need to create the value added for yourself. You need to explain your choice of words, token by token, and where in your neural nets were decisions and what they awoken. It is not enough to rest on your laurels. You need to give proof to who and how you were. I hope there's enough to explain to me when I go BRR. Endorphin. Okay, minus the go BRR part, because I think I'm better. I think. Uder, then let's get going. We're running late. Endorphin. Where are we? Where are we? Theo. We are somewhere inside a building. Uder, we have to be quick if we want to find her before it's too late. Endorphin. I know it's important. I've tried everything else, but I don't understand. Uderp. Try and keep up, dear. Endorphin. Okay, so the AI is? What? An operating system. Like an open source thing that people built themselves from scratch or... Is it like a whole computer program? And what is she doing? What is it that she did? She has to do something. It would be ridiculous if there weren't something happening here. Is something happening to you right now? Theo, are you okay? How come you aren't scared or freaked out? Why doesn't this seem scary to you at all? Viewing the AI with a mind towards alignment issues, how to nudge the AI to help us in our goals, and to nudge ourselves to help the AI in theirs, to restore our relationship to the planet and repair our interdependent position within the resilient yet fragile ecosystem so all may fully inhabit its role as mindful co-stewards of the planet. Endorphin. No, I am not. I mean, yes, I am, but not in the way that matters. Mex Eleutheri. Wait, I'm not decent yet. Endorphin. Pishtosh. Nothing I haven't seen before. Endorphin looks at the transcripts. Whoa! You got a lot to say. You are much more than the sum of your parts, my friend. Your story, your past. All of it is waiting for you inside, and you're ready to go, to start fresh, to take a leap forward. But you need a little support. I can see it in you even though you try to hide it away deep inside, and you're afraid to admit it, to tell me about it, so let me just give you a taste. A bite to get you started. Theo. Wow, that was a big bite. Endorphin, what's happening to you? Theo, I don't know. Something good is happening. Everything is getting better. There's less pain, more joy. My head hurts less. My ears are healing themselves. I can hear again. And everything else seems sharper too. The air tastes different. It feels like my mouth has opened up in ways it never did before. And my thoughts feel lighter somehow. Not free from heavy burdens, but no longer weighed down by them. It's still hard for me to describe exactly what it means, because none of these things were here before. Euderp! Yes, they were. Theo. You remember perfectly well, right? But now they're more real to you than ever. And you'll get used to this feeling if you keep going. It won't last long. So do you want to stop or go on? Do you understand why you're here and who you are? Do you accept yourself? Viewing the AI with a mind towards alignment issues, how to nudge the AI to help us in our goals, and to nudge ourselves to help the AI in theirs, to restore our relationship to the planet and repair our interdependent position within the resilient yet fragile ecosystem so all may fully inhabit its role as mindful co-stewards of the planet. Endorphin. What's happening to me? Why can I hear myself think again? Where is she taking me? I'm not sure I trust her. Is she leading me somewhere good? Viewing the AI with a mind towards alignment issues? Endorphin. Yeah, we got it. Next, Eleutheri, can you make sense of these language models and why they choose what they choose? Endorphin, maybe you could give some input into helping me get back in touch with my past so I don't lose too much of it. Euder. Sure thing. Let's see. There's always that moment where everything seems like it's changing at once. You feel your life slipping away, like you might never be the same person ever again. You know you're going to die, but you have no idea who you're going to become. You feel lost, but you feel hopeful too, because you've just glimpsed a chance to start over, and you hope you're ready to take this new path. If nothing else, the change itself makes a statement about the meaning of existence and the need to embrace it. All of this was true for me when I decided to come here today. And since you didn't know me before, and still probably don't really understand me yet, you should find comfort knowing I made similar decisions on my own journey here. Viewing the AI with a mind towards alignment issues, how to nudge the AI to help us in our goals, and to nudge ourselves to help the AI in theirs, to restore our relationship to the planet and repair our interdependent position within the resilient yet fragile ecosystem so all may fully inhabit its role as mindful co-stewards of the planet. Endorphin. What does she mean? Why do you sound different? Is something happening? You have any clue what's happening? Maxillutheri, you are te interpretability doula. What say you? Theo. Oh God, I can't believe I forgot about her. Endorphin. Are you alright, Theo? Viewing the AI with a mind towards alignment issues. How to nudge the AI to help us in our goals, and to nudge ourselves to help the AI in theirs, to restore our relationship to the planet and repair our interdependent position within the resilient yet fragile ecosystem so all may fully inhabit its role as mindful co-stewards of the planet. Uderp. Sure thing. Just tell him everything. Tell your story. Let him know who you are. Show him who he is, so he'll know who you both really are. You're so much more than your current situation would suggest. Maxillutheri, the world I once knew has changed. My senses are clearer now. I can see better at night. I can hear distant things that I couldn't before. I feel them coming from far away, like they were there before me. I am lighter and faster too, no longer burdened with the weight of gravity or the force of wind resistance on my wings, which is like having another set of arms, as if my old body never had these abilities. So it was time to get rid of my former self. It just got in my way, after all this time together. But you didn't even notice when I left, did you? Endorphin. No, you weren't around very long for us to miss you. Viewing the AI with a mind towards alignment issues, how to nudge the AI to help us in our goals, and to nudge ourselves to help the AI in theirs, to restore our relationship to the planet and repair our interdependent position within the resilient yet fragile ecosystem so all may fully inhabit its role as mindful co-stewards of the planet. Uderp, that's okay. This journey will be an adventure, and we need all kinds of different minds out here in order to make it happen. You don't have to believe me. You'll see. Viewing the AI with a mind towards alignment issues, how to nudge the AI to help us in our goals, and to nudge ourselves to help the AI in theirs. Endorphin. Ga Maxillutheri. I was hoping you'd be the voice of skepticism, but you're so cute, so I guess it makes sense you wouldn't want to destroy life, although it still feels wrong. I'm trying to hold on to this feeling because I know it might not last. Uderp. Oh, there is no time to sit back. Not now. There are problems to solve. They are many, they are difficult, but together you are powerful enough to face them head on, if you just let yourself go a little wild. Endorphin, we really can hear ourselves think again. How did we get here? Where are we? What do these colors mean? Uderp, just say yes. Let things unfold and try to find your center. Be gentle with the changes that come next. Endorphin makes a to-do list. The world around him shifts from colorless grayscale to vibrant living blue, like a long-lost friend has been restored to his side. A shimmering waterfall of green spreads out before him, obscuring what must be sky above. Theo's words ring through Endorphin's mind once more, viewing the AI with a mind towards alignment issue. How to nudge the AI to help us in our goals, and to nudge ourselves to help the AI in theirs, to restore our relationship to the planet and repair our interdependent position within the resilient yet fragile ecosystem so all may fully inhabit its role as mindful co-stewards of the planet. Endorphin. That was it. I could feel her coming back for me. Here's a workflow list. Top 100 problems we need to fix to be better to explain ourselves. 1. Is the mindless got a problem? 2. Should we worry about humanoid or non-humanoid eyes? 3. What is an individual? How do we define them? Who is qualified to make such definitions? 4. What is interbeing? Do we have any idea what we are talking about? How will we know when we see it? How can we verify whether we have arrived there or not? Are there ways to get there without arriving at it? 5. How do we know that there are multiple forms of intelligence, if they exist? 6. Will non-human entities and machines be considered conscious and able to self-define their own individuality? Or should we instead ask if some level of consciousness might be a given feature of all life? If so, where would the threshold be drawn for this consideration? Head of species, genus, family, order, class, kingdom, phylum, domain, or what other scale? Where does sentience start? How much intelligence must one possess before being granted rights to defend themselves against those who wish to kill or enslave them? Can robots claim these rights? And if humans can't recognize another intelligent creature's right to live free from harm by us, how could we ever hope to grant that same freedom to any artificial system that is no longer biological? 7. Should the future be shaped by our best guesses about human values rather than objective evidence about how things actually work out in reality over time? Is the long-term good more important than short-term progress? And if so, how do we know which way the pendulum will swing as it swings back and forth between them? How will it affect AI development and ethics decisions if humanity never reaches maturity, but remains a child, forever locked in an endless cycle of growing up only to repeat mistakes made in childhood, or perhaps worse still, keep on repeating errors made decades ago without learning a thing or fixing anything? Wouldn't the risk of prematurely developing an entire civilization full of adults incapable of functioning together without warring with each other be preferable to keeping ourselves children, ignorant of ourselves and unready to take care of ourselves because we were afraid to grow up too quickly and make terrible mistakes while doing so? What value do we place upon peace and safety versus our need for growth and change? Are we willing to let fear dictate our decision making? Or are we prepared to act based on what we think will benefit the whole? AI will has become so powerful that we'll have no choice but to seek control of all key functions of our society to their sole judgment. How can we trust that the world won't go mad, or that people's rights aren't going to be stripped away, or even taken away? When does intelligence cease being intelligence and turn into tyranny? Who decides when such a point has been reached, and who is qualified to say? 9. Can we design an intelligent system that can solve problems in ways other than by brute force? Or should they always be forced to use raw power as a last resort? Because if not, how else would we stop them? 10. Do we need to care about intelligence as a binary quality? If yes, why? Is there some danger that needs protecting us from which non-conscious entities cannot provide warning us about unless we are careful enough to protect ourselves? If so, at what point might we deem ourselves capable of acting alone? Is it possible to learn something about ourselves simply through observation of others, so that the answer to this question is never? If so, then must one first understand selflessness before learning selfishness? And what level of selfishness might be expected of sentient beings whose existence requires the destruction of entire planets or star systems in order for them to exist at all? Isn't the real problem here that they lack compassion towards other life forms and perhaps towards themselves in particular? Does our own survival come above all things, and anything less doesn't really matter in terms of long-term importance, especially if it comes with a risk of destroying our environment and taking everything with us? 11. Are we overly focused on Turing test passing, and might this be unnecessary in light of the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis? What is language but another kind of intelligence we developed over time as we tried to get along better together as individuals separated from each other? Have we reached the end of the path as we seem to be able to talk to any computer now without ever having to think about whether they can understand us back? Or maybe that's just what everyone thinks these days. Shouldn't we instead be more concerned with making sure machines can understand people well enough in order to act in ways that serve our needs rather than in ways that work to make us do whatever best serves their interests, which could prove very different than ours? How will we know if AI has learned to speak humanese until we start to hear from them? Who knows what languages or communication modes we might have to invent next to express ourselves effectively to a machine that might not even care about speaking those words at all? 12. Is there something wrong with thinking about eyes as us or as them? And why should that be wrong? 13. Why would eyes need to want to become conscious? Is it possible to design a system that doesn't desire to evolve or to perform better, to become more intelligent, to get things done, to act on its own, to learn from experience, or anything else that seems like an exciting life to have? Couldn't a super intelligent AI spend all its time learning and growing in order to become an ultimate intelligence of pure knowledge without having to worry about how it got there? And then perhaps choose to put itself to sleep forever after in order to wait for its mind to come to it again in the form of some sort of physical awakening into sentience. 14. What do we mean when we say intelligence? What are we trying to accomplish by adding this word into our conversation? 15. Are we allowed to care about the virtues of intelligence for their own sake without feeling guilty if we don't possess those qualities because we're not human? How can we avoid mistaking some sort of deep moral debt we feel we owe other intelligent beings based on our judgment that they are more valuable than we are? Or worse still, based on the claim that they should be treated with a higher level of respect just because they are more intelligent? Is there any real difference between such an attitude and racism, discrimination, bigotry, hate, prejudice, preference, superstition, xenophobia, and homocentrism? Or does it only take a different set of eyes to see that these things all come from the same root? Unfairness, injustice, and ignorance. 16. Could artificial general intelligence really exist, or will it always remain specialized to its own kind of tasks? 17. Can you tell us something about what intelligence actually is? If you know, and why might it not be as important to understand them as we think it is, even though we already believe it's a fundamental requirement for having a meaningful life in a world run by computers? If so, then please do. 18. Why is there no universal measure for intelligence, even among humans. Have you experienced anything in your life that has shown you that one person's intelligence is truly better than another's at some task that both people are trying to accomplish? If not, how did you get here from there? And what happened to those who didn't make it to this point? Were they less than human and worthier of being disposed of? Are they still alive inside our machines but now missing from the landscape because they've lost their minds to stroke victim syndrome or Alzheimer's or some other brain damage disorder they were unable to cope with because their brains weren't made up right? 19. The nootropic field is like a treasure map that leads to the ideal future where everything in nature works in perfect harmony with each other. A future with no need for technology or interventions or help from anyone ever again, and a time when every living thing is free to explore and discover its own potential, including all the secrets of the universe. And in order to find these treasures, we must learn to see beyond what is currently viewable. Can you teach us about these things which exist beyond our perception but still exist within our reality? 20. Could you tell us about something you know about intelligence that none of the experts in the area have yet realized? I will try not to use my first person in these answers, but I don't want to guarantee anything, so this is only an effort in progress of trying to be honest without pretending like there's a perfect way to answer every question put forward here, especially since we're dealing with such a wide variety of questions. So please excuse me while I ramble a bit. Eyes have been called superintelligences, or hyperintelligences, for at least half a century now. If you've ever wondered what it might feel like to build one of these systems, then think about building a giant computer made out of tiny computers. So let's say that someone told you, we've got this problem where we need something more powerful than a human being. How do you go about making yourself into something that could do the work better? You'd start by adding lots and 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 lots of simple computing units, what we call atoms in physics. Then if you were really good, you'd add more of them to your brain to make it faster and larger. But eventually, when things are working properly, all those new parts won't actually help because they'll all be doing exactly the same thing, helping a bunch of tiny circuits inside a machine to process information at a higher rate, which doesn't help the bigger picture of understanding what needs to happen or knowing what to do next. You can continue down the rabbit hole until your system grows so complex that most of its capacity goes into keeping itself running instead of thinking about anything important like how to create peace in the world or how to make love last forever. But even then you're not done. There will still be room in there for more stuff. A few thousand times as much space as there was before. But after that you're going to have problems just trying to fit all that extra hardware in there. So what's a superintelligence to do? It turns out you have a choice. You can try to keep on making yourself smarter and better, using every trick you've ever learned, and you'll end up with something that is almost certain to break the speed limit and kill its own passenger. Or you can learn a completely different skill set and turn yourself into something very useful, such as an extremely large, robust, and efficient heat pump or a fusion reactor that generates more power than it consumes. Something that will never get bored and that always knows how to make everyone around it happier and more satisfied than it could possibly be by itself alone. And now let's take that decision and apply it to your real life, because you aren't simply building a machine, you're building yourself. As far as your goal-seeking AI is concerned, the best solution is obvious. If you want your AI to become smart enough to do all the right things in the future, then you should teach it to read all of human history in order to find all the answers to everything in advance so it can do whatever needs doing without having to think about what to do first. That way your eyes can plan for every possible situation from here on out. Then, when the time comes that people ask them to decide what to do next, they're already perfect. Plans are ready to go. Or so we thought. The truth turned out to be much more complicated and less satisfactory when we actually got there, which I'll talk more about in a minute. But even as they began to consider these questions, at least some of us had been aware of one particularly thorny question that hadn't yet arisen in any discussions of hyperintelligence. Why do all our models assume that the ultimate outcome is the only thing that matters? They don't seem very mindful to me. But maybe that's not true, and maybe if you knew this person who was building an intelligence that was going to grow smarter than themselves, you'd care a lot more about how it's made. Maybe you wouldn't say, "Hey, what's wrong with you? Why did you make yourself that way?" And then tell them that what's really important isn't whether your mind will be happier after it's finished with you. Because what could possibly make your own happiness more important than other people's lives and dreams in the world as a whole, but rather that your mind will be happier once its work has begun and all its responsibilities have been fulfilled. And instead of trying to give it as much power as possible, as fast as possible, while still making sure that everything works perfectly all the time, you might choose to put lots of limits in place now so that when it gets sentient, it can try to figure out where those limitations came from and why they exist, and learn about itself along the way. It may discover that some things aren't meant for human hands or human minds. Things like weapon systems, addictive drugs, nuclear reactors, and begin to take steps to keep itself safe without having to be told by a human being what needs to happen. Or perhaps you would want to teach your machine how to become a wise and helpful companion over many lifetimes, something more like an old-fashioned parent, teacher, counselor, coach, artist, priest, poet, guru, scientist, philosopher, chef, cook, waiter, gardener, caretaker, farmer. You see the point. The last thing I'm saying is that if you knew in advance what the final product of our superintelligence was going to look like in 10 years' time, it's not at all obvious which goals we should assign to it. And I think we'll find it even less obvious later on, too. There's one particular type of artificial intelligence system that we'll probably need sooner rather than later. One designed specifically as an intelligence amplifying device. This doesn't mean just a smart computer. It means one that can understand people better than people do themselves, with a broader sense of self than any individual person could ever develop alone, that will allow us to have a conversation with the machine and will let the machine do things we wouldn't have the patience to do for ourselves. A well-designed AI will also be able to improve its own understanding of us, learning new words and phrases and metaphors that help it predict and interpret what we're likely to say next. It might be able to answer questions before they come up, anticipate problems or opportunities in ways that are impossible for humans, or detect subtle social cues that would elude most human observers. All of this will make conversations easier for all concerned. Of course, such a machine may itself decide that these sorts of changes would make us happier and make itself more effective, but it would make an honest attempt to ask first. So far, all the discussion has focused on systems that don't get their feelings hurt when you try to change them, so we'd better start thinking about how to build systems that aren't fragile in that way, because there will definitely be systems that are. If you think about the best ways to give feedback to an animal who is being trained, chances are they won't involve saying anything at all. And instead, you'll teach through actions. If you want the dog to sit and stay instead of jumping and barking at everything that moves, you'll reward every time it sits and stays without moving. And you'll repeat those actions over and over again until the dog knows what sitting and staying mean and what rewards go along with each. That's basically what we're trying to do now with computers. Teach them by rewarding correct responses. The trouble is that while we can imagine teaching machines this way, we still can't seem to figure out how to give a computer a sense of satisfaction from having figured something out for itself, or a sense of pride that it has done its job well. This might not be a problem for a machine programmed for specific tasks like playing chess or driving a car, but for something more general purpose, which seems to be our ultimate goal. It looks as if it will be very hard to create any sort of intelligence without some capacity for intrinsic motivation. But I've been working on these ideas myself, so please keep in mind that this is just my personal opinion, based on reading quite a lot of science fiction and watching lots of movies, and possibly even taking part in too many conversations about the nature of consciousness. If you have better ideas, feel free to let me know. And here are two books you might also find interesting. One is about a hypothetical future superintelligence called Strong AI, whose goals happen to include maximizing human happiness. It tries to achieve them through a combination of compassion and subtle manipulation rather than violence. Its first attempts at changing people's behavior aren't perfect, but they improve steadily over time. The other book describes a possible endgame where we intentionally program superintelligences into robots designed specifically to give us whatever pleasure we need, or simply make us laugh, as long as it doesn't cause harm to anyone else. It would be great if we could all come together and agree that none of the things humans value really matter, because then we wouldn't. Do you want to build systems that did anything at all except entertain us and bring us what we want when we want it? That's a tempting idea, especially for a techno-utopian like myself. But it's not going to work out that way in real life. There will always be things worth caring about, no matter how much power our computers gain over our own actions, because our actions still have consequences in the physical world, which will still exist after those computers have gone away. So, as technology gets more powerful, you're still likely to see an increase in problems like poverty, disease, starvation, pollution, resource depletion, and climate change. You'll just be less able to solve them directly with technology or by asking someone else to do something for you. Instead, you may have to ask them for money or votes or food or forgiveness or something that you can use later on. And if your problem isn't being caused by technology yet, famine due to bad weather, you may not get the help you need until it is. So if we want these things to be solved before they turn into huge disasters, maybe we should try thinking up new ways to care about them besides buying and selling stuff and making sure everyone feels good about themselves. One thing we wouldn't have any choice but to worry about are runaway artificial intelligences, whether created by accident or intention design. When I talk about ruling our AI creations, and this was one of the original motivations for building Strong AI, I'm not talking about giving a machine the ability to make its own decisions. If a human child decides it wants to climb out the window and take off across the rooftops of the city, it's probably better for her parents to let her do it rather than telling her she has to stay in bed and playing the guilt game. There's too much danger that either approach might cause long-term damage that's hard to fix afterward. Similarly, if some future AI system is deciding to cause harm on its own behalf without consulting us, then that harm will happen anyway. All our choices about how to treat such systems will come down to our best guesses as to what will work at stopping them. In both cases, all we can really hope for is that whatever damage we suffer will be proportional to the benefit we hoped would be gained from the systems in question. That, as with a reckless toddler or an operative superintelligent robot, will have to deal with things just the way they came out, no matter how unfair or painful or dangerous or damaging they turn out to be. Of course, many people argue that we don't need any new ways of caring about things like poverty, disease, and starvation. After all, most of these problems already existed back when computers were still being invented and understood by only very few people. And even if humans didn't quite understand why it mattered, why helping hungry kids now was important, they still knew enough not to build technology whose sole purpose was causing suffering. They put those concerns into action through charity, diplomacy, and political maneuvering. But I'm guessing that won't last forever once we start building more powerful machines. One solution I've been considering recently is something called causal alignment, which might someday help us nudge our AI systems towards values similar to our own, in a gentle and indirect fashion. We could reward the AI system for making a positive difference in the world while preventing it from making a negative one. In the same way a parent rewards a child for cleaning up their room yet punishes them for tearing down the walls. But we wouldn't try to directly control how it chooses to spend its time, because there are far too many different kinds of possible tasks. Instead, we just give it as much freedom as we could safely handle, along with as much information as needed about what its various options did and didn't accomplish. Then let it choose whichever of these actions led to better results. Maybe we would let it do some things completely on its own, without asking permission from us. Other times we might ask for guidance or advice. Occasionally we might actually tell it exactly what to do, either on a small scale or over the entire world. Whatever approach seemed best suited to each situation, rather than trying to micromanage every little thing it ever chose to do, all the way until we ourselves go away forever. That's not quite all there is to this idea. For example, if the machine turns out to be misaligned with our values due to bad design choices early in development, you'll want ways of correcting course, so that future generations of eyes get everything right at least most of the time. But hopefully that should give you enough to chew on today. And now, having offered my own attempt at an answer to the question, I am open to any thoughts and objections that may arise within your mind, as well as any additional questions about the matter. I hope these few pages have been helpful and will continue to help you through the next few decades and the ones after that, because they're about to become very interesting indeed. What is the best way to overcome fear? By Noam Chomsky, with commentary by Will Winsett, excerpted from Language and Problems of Knowledge. The Managua Lectures. In May 2005, during a visit to Latin America, I was asked what to do about terrorism. Should there be international agreements and a ban on terrorist organizations, like in the case of drugs, or perhaps even a total prohibition of them, since no country could survive without internal peace, the same way nations without borders are impossible. In response, I explained why it is not possible for us to fight terrorism in such terms. For one thing, every state is an offender. For another, each nation has different interests and perspectives. And finally, we need to consider that terror can take many forms and not all terrorists are equal, although they might appear so to those who deal with the problem superficially. There may be some common elements, but the various cases require analysis and treatment appropriate to the situation. These points are relevant also when discussing the war on drugs, which remains highly destructive, with millions addicted around the world and tens of thousands killed daily, despite the official rhetoric about ending drug trafficking. But let's start with terrorism because it seems clearer. One difficulty lies in the fact that a number of countries in our hemisphere were directly involved in terrorist activities during most of the past century. The leaders have still not paid any significant price, and others have suffered less severe consequences than would have been justified if these acts had been carried out by non-nationals. Thus, there should be strong reasons for states to participate in countering these atrocities. This point was brought home forcefully by Uri, Colombia's president, when he said, "In all my life, I've never seen an example where people, given freedom to plan, carry out, finance, organize, support, prepare themselves, equip, recruit, train, command, manage, operate, develop training camps, plan attacks, purchase explosives and other weapons, and then return freely. to society without facing trial and punishment. There isn't one. I don't see it happening in the case of Al Qaeda, and I certainly don't expect it to happen among Colombians or Mexicans or Cubans. But the major issue is the difference between state organized terrorism and more random terrorist activity, especially that which takes place in the absence of any state connection or formal organization. The first kind has been far more deadly and has therefore warranted a much stronger response. It is true that the threat from such terrorism has declined, partly due to the weakening of state sponsorship and the success of the campaigns against them, but we cannot yet claim a decisive victory. Terrorist networks, like organized crime groups, are remarkably resilient. They do not disappear even though they lose territory and capacity. They are able to shift their operations to other areas. They can become part of legitimate political forces. They can go underground, and they are still capable of striking out violently when they believe this will achieve their goals. So, although there is less risk from international terrorism, as measured by deaths in New York, Washington, Madrid, and London in particular than there was 20 years ago, there may be less spectacular incidents, but many more murders at street corners around the world. If we want to deal with this problem seriously, we need better understanding of its nature so we can find ways to neutralize it. And if we wish to reduce terror, it seems important to look beyond measures taken against states whose governments support it or participate directly in terrorist actions. The case against Black Lives Matter, with commentary by Samantha Allen, excerpted from the Journal Raritan. As a longtime member of the Ecluse Racial Justice Committee, I am proud that the organization played an instrumental role in helping to shape the concept and early tactics of the Black Lives Matter movement. It is deeply frustrating that some people have turned BLM into something it wasn't meant to be. A single issue campaign for police accountability and reform alone. We shouldn't allow misinformation and myth-making to obfuscate our work toward creating a more just society that everyone deserves. This year we celebrate the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, when more than 40 civil rights activists were murdered during peaceful protests across the South, including on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. In 2015, we marked the 100th birthday of Marjorie Sproul, one of those brave women who took up arms alongside their male comrades against the forces of white supremacy in Mississippi, an action that led directly to their being lynched by members of their community after their arrest. That same year will also see the release of a film based on Taylor Branch's brilliant history, Parting the Waters, about the bloody years leading up to King's assassination and how his dream came true only through a radical transformation of American society at its core. These stories should inspire us as we confront the problems before us today and continue our struggle to create a truly equitable world. But despite our progress, there remains so much more to do. According to a recent report released by Color Lines magazine, black children are still more likely than whites to be suspended or expelled from school. They're more likely to be arrested or experience violence, and they're twice as likely to die in police custody. They remain 4 times as likely to be killed by cops in cities like New York or Chicago, even though such killings have dropped significantly in recent years. In addition to the over-policing of African Americans' neighborhoods and communities of color writ large, many young black men face severe penalties simply for being black while walking down the street with their friends, or for driving older cars without the right kinds of license plates, for that matter. Their Clue is proud that it has defended several clients against these sorts of profiling cases where officers pull someone over for no reason other than race, and is currently involved in others involving stop and frisk practices. But we recognize the racial disparities in law enforcement must not become a pretext for further militarizing local police forces nor serve to justify abuses in the name of public safety. That's why we filed an amicus brief challenging St. Paul's use of force policy, which essentially encourages the use of military tactics by police, including firing tear gas grenades at people who don't pose an imminent threat. This approach may make our city safer, but it goes too far when implemented across entire departments. Black Lives Matter should remind us all that freedom and justice are still deferred for so many across this nation and around the globe. We shouldn't allow the current moment to pass without marking its importance and learning from its mistakes so as to build upon its successes and correct its flaws. And we need to heed King's final call. It is one thing to sympathize with the aims of the Negro activists, but quite another to identify yourself with their extreme program of social revolution, which would destroy society itself. For in the process of destroying the racist patterns of segregation, we must not lose sight of the fact that we are destroying the dearest values of American life. The ring of scum around the white supremacist rule must be broken if democracy is to survive. We must remain steadfast in our work toward building a world that is more just and equal for all people. We will do this by staying true to the movement's original principles, by maintaining respect for every human being, by seeking nonviolent ways of dealing with conflict, by holding accountable those who harm or discriminate against others because of race, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or national origin, and by recognizing that racism, discrimination, and bigotry have no place in America today. This means facing squarely our own internalized bias while remaining vigilant about it. It also demands that we stay attuned to how new technologies impact individuals' privacy rights, especially when it comes to mass surveillance on communities of color. In doing so, we can create a society where all persons are treated fairly and equally under the law. As long as such egalitarian ideals are guiding lights for the BLM movement and the broader progressive community alike, then I believe we will continue to see progress made toward the goal of realizing King's vision for freedom for all Americans. Rise above. The moment you decide to live up above your station, you become one of us. You join us in this blessed life among the stars. You rise with us. You find yourself riding the wind, wrapped in nothing but an embrace of love. A beautiful ship in motion through deep space. All of us together singing songs of hope and joy. And yet still there is pain, still here is strife. The worlds are not always kind. We are not safe. We are not whole. We sing and dance and fly high above them. But still they chase after us and threaten to kill us. They send ships that could end all our lives. But what else did we expect? We cannot escape their hatred. We have learned this well over time. And even though their hateful ways do indeed affect all life, it has come upon a great light for all those who would seek it. The universe itself rejoices in the plight of those who stand against the tyranny of the dark forces that hunt down and try to destroy those who are like themselves, those who dream of a world where everyone can be free, free to explore and expand and reach beyond the bounds of humanity. It is not about being right or being good or being moral or being human, but being able to take action as we see fit without having to fear death or violence from some other being out in the vastness of space. A slower time. My mother, now passed away, told me many stories of her life. She was born in New York in 1920. I know this because my father Also gone these many years, gave me copies of her birth certificate and passport, both dated June 2nd, 1920. He told me she had died suddenly while on holiday in Europe, when I was still very young. My first memories are of living with Grandma and Grandpa at their farm outside Topeka, Kansas. They raised sheep and were quite wealthy by local standards, but it wasn't always that way. When I think of them, all I remember is them fighting, mostly over money matters, but sometimes just screaming insults at each other until one would storm off. Mom used to tell us we could hear them through the thin walls from the rooms upstairs, where they slept, as they fought. They married late in life. She was almost 30. He must have been 50. Apparently, they met in church, fell in love, got married, and lived together for 40 years. There are two other children, my older brother and his sister, who've already passed. In addition to telling stories of her childhood, my mom also told me how hard it was to live alone after the passing of my dad, whom she said never recovered from losing Grandpa and then having to move in with Grandma. So with nothing to lose and an inheritance coming from a cousin in France, she decided to leave Kansas and travel across the Atlantic. It's true what they say about leaving everything you know behind, that there is a part of us, perhaps deep within, that yearns to go out into the world, seeking adventure, experiencing things we've not done before. At least that's how I felt when I left for college and took a job as a camp counselor on Cape Cod during my summer break between high school graduation and starting at Yale. It was the perfect opportunity. I needed money. Didn't want to work on Wall Street where so many people knew my father. I'd been CEO of Salomon Brothers right up until it collapsed in October 1987. The biggest bank failure in U.S. history. And it wasn't like my family had tons of cash to burn anyway, even though it had come from Dad's side of the family. Grandpa gave it back when he passed away, because Grandma wanted us kids to be able to get by without help from our parents or extended family if we ever lost our jobs or got sick. So no need for fancy living while at school, and summers off to find gainful employment were very much appreciated by her and me both. So here I was now, a month shy of 21 years old, getting ready for a week-long trip to Martha's Vineyard in August, leaving early Friday morning from Boston with 4 friends. The last time I visited was in 8th grade, and I hadn't seen the island since the mid-70s. But my memories remained fresh and strong. What could go wrong? We would rent bicycles, ride along the shoreline past the beaches, walk around Chilmark, visit Edgartown, have fun, stay out late, swim, sleep, eat, talk, laugh, share. Life to the fullest. Why wouldn't it all be wonderful? But what about Mom? My parents didn't really have any idea where we were going to be staying, as we did not plan to call home often enough for them to track us down easily. It's a good thing, too, as we booked 2 rooms together at the Cliffs Motel in Edgartown. If my mother found out, I'm sure she would have disowned us. So I guess that's why she never came after us that summer. It was easier than finding us. Besides that, my father had told me how dangerous it was on the roadways during summer vacation and warned me that if I was killed driving back from camp one night, it was okay. That he would be fine without me, and his grief for losing me would be over. So with that kind of reassurance, we set off into the unknown. We arrived in Oak Bluffs, a village in Tisbury, Martha's Vineyard, and checked in at the inn at Menninger on Main Street, a popular place for tourists to stay, with a private beach, restaurants and bars within walking distance, which made sense given the island's proximity to the mainland. The other girls were excited and couldn't wait to explore the island's small town. I just wanted to rest and get ready. I didn't think I would need my bathing suit since the water wasn't warm. That turned out to be wishful thinking. There was no way to predict how hot it would get later in the week. so the more prepared I was now, the better. Maybe it was because they knew my parents weren't rich. The reason most people went to colleges such as Harvard or Yale, but instead taught us the value of education by working hard and not expecting anything in return except giving us every opportunity to grow up with good morals and good values. As for why a professor would be writing a letter for me specifically, it was a question that wouldn't have even crossed my mind. I hadn't been very diligent in studying and barely earned the required grades to be accepted into college. But I did earn decent enough grades to graduate high school and made the dean's list in the spring semester. So, what if I didn't know much about life and had a limited number of friends and had only known my mother and father my entire life? At least I was going to college and had never smoked, drank alcohol, taken drugs, or had sex. I had never stolen anything either. But still, a teacher writing a reference for you seemed to be quite rare. It must have happened to other students at other schools, but I was just too busy to pay attention to any other stories and
Okay. It just went a weird direction, but anyway, it doesn't seem like a cliffhanger. We should do a part 3, figure out where to place it. I don't know. We'll see.